Hi and welcome to Across the Desk. This week we're going to talk about Oklahoma's Governor Kevin Stitt and the tantrums he likes to throw as he does what I like to call his Stitt Fits when he doesn't get his way on things like legislation on school choice and giving money to private schools and wanting to block any bill by anybody that opposes him on anything, whether it would be good for Oklahomans or not. So you get to suffer because Kevin Stitt has to throw a fit about it. So Kevin Stitt, the last couple of weeks, have been throwing a lot of fits lately because he really just hasn't been getting his way with the legislature. Actually, it's the Senate in the legislature. The House is willing to go along lockstep with him as long as Charles McCall is way up his butt, has his head in there. Then that's where the House will be. But the Senate, they're kind of fighting back a little bit here. They're like, wait a minute, we sent this bill, the House changed it, came back, we're not just going to pass it clean. And that's what the governor wanted. He goes, now we had these changes with the House. I negotiated it because I'm the governor. Everybody wants me to be the governor. So what that means for Kevin Stitt is he's kind of a dictator. See, he's a governor. Everybody voted him to be governor to do all these changes. Not you guys in the Senate. They didn't vote for you guys in the Senate or the House to do stuff. They voted for me, King Kevin, to do it all. And you got to follow what I say. And this is what happened. So when that happened, the Senate said, no, we have our process and we're going to follow it. And they did. Well, that made Kevin upset. So they passed a bunch of bills, sent it to Kevin Stitt. And Kevin Stitt said, well, you know, all these people that oppose me on my stuff, all their bills, they're not getting passed. I'm going to veto every one of them. It doesn't matter if it was good for people or not. Bills like Native regalia, wearing religious symbolism of Native Americans, which I can honestly see how Kevin Stitt doesn't like that. He's a Christian nationalist. He thinks we should be a Christian nation with only Christian God and Christian laws and Christian processes and Christian culture. So when it comes to Native Americans and their culture and their religious regalia and beliefs, well, that's something we can't have. Veto it. And that's what he did. Letters came out from the 5 tribes and the chief of the Cherokees against this, saying, hey, look, people, we already have the right, because it's a First Amendment right. And here we go, First Amendment. Something those conservatives just really hate. Unless they can use it as a cudgel to go after those they don't like, well, it's worthless to them. So in this case, hey, their First Amendment means everything, and yours doesn't mean a lick of anything. And that's exactly how Kevin Stitt sees this. So to veto that is no big deal. The rest of it, I mean, there's things in there that allow professional boards to continue instead of sunset. So there's 3 boards. One was like the chiropractor board. That's one that may have to go away if the bill doesn't come back up. He vetoed it. So there may not be a professional board for some places. For some professions, may not have a board. We may not have state oversight on people that are doing jobs that are precarious to the public health and safety of its citizens. So we have that going on for Kevin Stitt. See, he threw a Stitt fit, and now we don't have professional licensing boards in a few areas. Another thing that's big, another big thing was OETA. Now I'm not sure how big this was as part of the 20 that he wanted to veto because it was somebody authored it but he didn't like, or they did something he didn't like, but he came out against OETA, which is the PBS station here in Oklahoma. It's one of the most watched PBS stations in the nation, actually. Brings a lot of great educational programming, non-biased programming in a lot of ways. One of the best news programs in Oklahoma, and that's the problem. See, it won't skew things for Kevin Stitt because he's got to have them skewed. See, he's kind of an icky person. He's very corrupt. He's not really a good guy, but he needs to perceive an image that my conservative values are so awesome, because we know those conservative values really aren't that awesome when you boil them down to it. Yeah. Hey, look, it's our new Oklahoma GOP chair, Mr. Nathan Dahm, and his wonderful conservative values. See what I'm telling you? There you go. So anything, back on Kevin Stitt. So he vetoed all these bills that do all kinds of things. Parole eligibility, licensing boards, Senate confirmation on certain areas and certain things and certain chairmanships. He vetoed all this just because, not because of anything in those bills were bad or that anything in those bills would do anything that would go against anything or make huge changes. No, it's just because the people that authored those bills didn't go along with Kevin Stitt and rubber stamp the legislation he wanted to go through. So anyway, now we get this tit for tat. So now we're in a battle of attrition. Here we go. They're playing chess and checkers over there because those are two games of attrition, by the way. And anyway, so that's what they're doing. The Senate, and this the whole funny thing is, these are all Republicans going at each other. The Democrats, we're just kind of sitting on the sidelines eating popcorn because that's really all they can do. See, the state's been gerrymandered so bad at the state level that we have basically about a dozen Democrats in the whole of the legislature. Yeah, we have about 14 Democrats to represent 4 million people, and there's over 100 Republicans. Of course, there's well more than about 40% of Oklahoma registered Democrat, but we don't have that type of representation. This is what you see. So Democrats are just kind of sitting back on the sidelines and just kind of eating popcorn and taking note. Hey, look how divided the conservatives, look how divided the Republicans are. They're so divided on certain things. And some of these things, like abortion and the LGBTQ questions, that are really hurting them politically. I mean, national polls, they're off the charts, not in Republican conservatives' favor when it comes to things like abortion and the culture wars. So every time you see Ryan Walters say woke, that's a negative for them. They lose voters every time they say that. The only people that like it are the 17% of their base. And guess what? You're not going to win a whole lot with 17%. Now, this is Oklahoma, so we have straight party voting, and that's what a lot of Republicans do. They straight party vote. So they're probably safe in those regards, but nationally, like, let's take instance James Lankford. He's not well liked nationally. He has no coalition in Congress at all. He's got like 3 to 5 people, and those 3 to 5 people are the people that are the main seditionists of January 6th. That's all he has. Everybody else, they kind of shun him. They think he's way too extreme and way too just creepy. So that's James Lankford, and that's why he's not very popular nationally. That's why you won't see him run for president anytime soon. Even though he thinks he's so powerful, I'm on Fox all the time and I got all this stuff, he doesn't really have anything. See, when he tried to pull this sedition on January 6th, that really lost him a lot of power. And it really did no favors for the state of Oklahoma. And we did no favors by voting him back in for another 6-year term either. We did our state no favors doing that. So that's what we get. So we're stuck with a traitor, a seditionist for another 6 years. But back to this Kevin Stitt thing that I want to talk about. Kevin Stitt. So he came out with his Stitt Fit. Totally vetoed all these bills. And the OETA thing, that's what gets me, this OETA thing. So he has to try to defend it. He does a tuck-tail and retreat from being, I'm just going to be a badass and I'm just going to veto all this stuff. Well, the OTA thing, I just don't think it's a viable thing anymore today, even though a lot of people watch it. And then he goes off on Clifford the Red Dog. So this is a point where this acorn hits him on the head, and the sky seems to be falling because it's a crisis. Because in this Clifford story, they had 2 dads. That's it. 2 dads show up to see a recital. They don't do anything except sit in seats next to each other. But that right there is enough to set off Kevin Stitt to do a Chicken Little act and go off on Clifford the Red Dog for having this episode where it had 2 fathers in it. That's it. That's it. There wasn't anything else. And just because of that, he goes way overboard and says they're sexualizing kids by doing that. Of course, I guess if you have a wife and a husband, traditional woman and man come in, sit down next to each other like, hey, we're the parents of that kid. Is that sexualizing him? No, not to Kevin Stitt, you see, because here again, conservatives likes to dish it. Hey, that's sexualizing kids, having 2 parents sitting there. Just way too cowardly to take it. Well, what if the husband and a wife that are male and female come in? Same thing. Same thing, right? How do you think that kid was made? Sexualizing right there. But to Kevin Stitt, he'd have to retreat from that too and justify it in some way that that acorn that's hitting him in the head was actually the sky falling in some way, and run around in a crisis mode fit of cowardice is what he's doing. So that's what Kevin Stitt does with that OTA thing. Oh, and then there's this other, can't remember, the Wiggles. It wasn't something, it was something, some other show that had 2 lesbian kangaroos. He mentioned that too, which is interesting, that he seems to think that LGBTQ people don't exist. See, they don't exist. And that's the big deal. That's what him and Ryan Walters are on. They're on this LGBTQ people. They don't exist. And if they do exist, well, they shouldn't, you see, because that's a sin. And they're sexualizing children just by being together. And that's how they do this twisted thing, using the 6 degrees of conservative cowardice to get there, going the long way around somehow, that some kid having 2 fathers is somehow sexualizing children. And they believe this. And I don't know that, and they do believe this. And they want everybody else to believe it. And really what it is, see, they see OETA, they see public broadcasting as liberal. They do. They see it as liberal. And the funny thing is, OETA gets about a quarter of their funding from the state. So they probably could do okay without it. They would still be around, but the deal is, this has a lot more to do with that. This is also renewing their FCC license. This has more to do than just their funding. This has to do with renewing their license. See, because OETA, the public broadcast station of Oklahoma, would probably do okay. They might have to be a little smaller, and it would probably suck, less programming and everything else. But they'll find a way to make it. But if they take their FCC license, well, it doesn't matter of state or private funding. They're just not in business anymore. And that's really what they're after. See, when Kevin Stitt says, well, we just don't want to publicly fund it. No. They really just want to shut it all down, whether it's private or publicly funded. Believe me, Kevin Stitt is a coward. He'll find a way to weasel around some way and justify his hate of OETA. Because, see, it doesn't align with his screwed up, twisted, conservative values, see? And so he has to force everyone else into believing what he wants or wanting what he wants. And these are Oklahoma values. Why are they Oklahoma values? Well, because they voted me governor. So my values are Oklahoma values because I'm voted in. See how that works? And that's exactly what Kevin Stitt is doing here. It's exactly the whole game he's playing. See, it's a big power grab for him and making people bend to his will. It's not about your freedom. It's about his power and his control. And that's what you get with Kevin Stitt. And that's why he's throwing a big fit right now. Because he's not getting his way. So he's vetoing all these bills because he didn't get his way. He's throwing a big old fit about it. Throwing a tantrum and stomping his feet. And that's okay. I guess the Senate kind of got back at him because they're the one who do the confirmations on his appointments. So they just said, we're not going to confirm your appointments. And they didn't. So we'll see. So it's a big tit for tat battle of attrition going on between the Senate and the governor here in Oklahoma. Kevin Stitt, Greg Treat, kind of going at it a little, trying to have a pissing war, and we'll see what comes of it. I bet in the end, one thing is, it may be a good show, but in the end, it's the people of Oklahoma that are going to suffer the most. Because Kevin Stitt is a selfish, self-centered bastard. And that's just how it is. And that's what we're stuck with here in Oklahoma. Well, there you go. This is Across the Desk. And we will see you again next week.